From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Good morning. Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you, and welcome to the Tuesday, August 15th, 2017 meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. We're going to begin today's meeting with our flag salute. That's going to be led by Roger McIntosh with Valley Fever Awareness. And I'd ask that you would remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation, whichever you prefer.
Salute. Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Please be seated. All right. Welcome, everybody. If you'd like to follow along with our agendas today, they are available at the two back tables by the exits. And we're going to begin today with our consent agenda. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda, and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. And so I'll read the consent agenda items now. On page 2, items 3 through 5 are on consent, as well as item 8. On page 3, all items 9 through 17 are on consent. On page 4, items 18 through 23 are all on consent. On page 5, items 29 through 33 are on consent. And on page 6, items 34 through 39 are on consent. Are there any members of the audience today that would like to make a comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and ask if any board members would like to remove an item, or I would request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion on consent.
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And now we will return to page 2 on our agenda and start with item number 1 under resolutions and proclamations. This item 1 will proclaim August 2017 as Valley Fever Awareness Month in Kern County, and Supervisor Couch will make this presentation.
Motion on the proclamation.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. It's a pleasure to do this today, but it's a serious subject. There's a lot of people that do a lot of good work combating valley fever in our community, and it's important for us just to do whatever we can to support their efforts, and this is just a small effort in doing that. So I know you'll join me in doing so. I'm going to read the proclamation. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Rob Purdy. He's with the Valley Fever Foundation. And the proclamation reads, the Board of Supervisors, County, Kern, State of California has officially proclaimed August 2017 as Valley Fever Awareness Month in Kern County, and this recognition has been entered into the official board minutes signed by our Honorable Chairman, Zach Scribner. Rob, you want to say a few words?
Thank you.
Good morning. As Supervisor Couch said, my name is Robert Purdy, and I serve on the board of the Valley Fever Americas Foundation. For over 20 years, our foundation has supported Valley Fever research, testing, and awareness. I would like to thank the board for their continued support of Valley Fever awareness and the Valley Fever Americas Foundation. As a lifetime resident of Kern County and a Valley Fever survivor, this disease is very personal to me and many others like me. Today, we are fortunate to have a leading researcher here with us to accept your proclamation and hopefully share a few words about the world of Valley Fever research and the quest for a cure for cocci. Dr. John Galgiani from the Valley Fever Center for Excellence is leading the work on a drug called nicomycin Z, which has a potential cure for cocci or valley fever. Nicomycin Z has a lot of history in Kern County where it was saved from the scrap heap when a previous developer went bankrupt by community members and the Cal State Foundation. We wanted to take this opportunity to show the board some of what your support of the foundation is accomplishing. We also wanted to invite those of you who are available this Saturday morning to come out to our annual walk held at the Pioneer Village Kern County Museum, or our first vaccine research fundraising dance, which is following the rodeo at the Tehachapi Mountain Event Center. And we also encourage you to support Valley Fever with our hashtag #ConquerCocci. Cocci is COCCI. Thank you. Dr. Galgiani, would you like to?
Thank you. I'm John Galgiani, and I don't live in Kern County. I live in Tucson, Arizona, and I'm director of the Valley Fever Center for Excellence at the University of Arizona College of Medicine in Tucson. And I'm here simply to thank you for the leadership that Kern County has shown, actually going way back to the 1930s. It turns out that this disease was not understood what caused valley fever until your public health officer, Myrnie Gifford, in the 1930s identified it was caused by the fungus, Coccidioides. So there's a long history in your county of leading awareness of this disease, and you're just continuing that today with this proclamation. I'm I wish Arizona had as much focus on this disease as you do here in Bakersfield. It literally is the leader for this disease in the country, and I thank you very much for that. We are very interested in trying to help with this disease. Rob has mentioned the nicomycin Z, which actually would not be in development now if it was not for Cal State Bakersfield Foundation, who saved this drug from going onto a shelf somewhere and eventually transferred it to us at the University of Arizona to help make the development proceed forward. We also actually just were awarded a $4.8 million grant from the National Institutes of Health to continue the work on a vaccine we hope will actually be a preventative vaccine in dogs in the next 4 or 5 years, on its way to becoming a vaccine for humans. So I just am here to thank you very much for your leadership and look forward to working with you in the future. This is one disease for both states, and we should be continuing to work together to help make it better handled by our doctors. Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda will be public requests. Item 2, this is a request of Dick Taylor, Liaison Representative, Devil Pups Youth Program for America, to address the board, highlighting the accomplishments of program graduates, which include Kern County teenagers. Mr. Taylor, good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Scrivener and fellow board members. I'm not here today as your County Veteran Service Officer. Well, I'm that as well, but I'm here today in the capacity as a liaison rep for Devil Pups Incorporated, and I have with me today my wife Cheryl, who is also a liaison representative, as well as Julio Garcia and Olivia Garcia, who are also liaison representatives. And then after we go through a short slideshow, and I abide by what Mrs. Krause says. If she says cut it to X amount of minutes, it better not be any more than that. So I promise to not take up any more of your time, but I want to show you about a 1-minute slideshow. And also, I'm honored today, and I'm going to let him speak when I'm done with the slideshow, joined by Mr. Rich Linsday. Rich is the president and CEO of Devil Pups Incorporated. That's the nonprofit that supports our program, and he's also a Marine Corps officer. So if we can switch up this slideshow, I'll show you that real quick. And if it works like it's supposed to, you can see it go down the line. So this logo was developed by Walt Disney, just so you know, way back on a napkin back in the day, in 1954. This started off back in February. We had tryouts and physical fitness tests out at the Kern County Sheriff's Office where boys and girls try out. It's a competitive application program. They try out with exercises of sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, and a 1 mile run. There you see also they're participating in the 1 mile run and the sit-up competition. The girls, instead of pull-ups, they do an arm hang, so they get up on a pull-up bar and hang there for 24 seconds. And this is part of our program that Mr. and Mrs. Garcia really took our Kern teens to the next level several years ago, and that is from the time we select our teens till the time they go to camp, every weekend they take them out to Hart Park and in the hills. Many of you have been out there, you know where Toads Canyon is, and those hills, and that happens to be a federal hill that they're climbing up there. And they get them hiked, and they do conditioning exercises, and they run early in the morning on weekends. And that's part of the reason our kids are stronger when they get to camp and they're ready to go. So these are some of the exercises they participate in. They take big giant tractor tires and turn them over, lots of team building exercises. That's the morning on July 27th where our kids all loaded into vans and headed off down to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton to begin the program. And I might add, this program started off in 1954, and Kern County has been participating ever since. Everybody's loaded on the bus, look at all those happy faces. And even though it's not like boot camp, it kind of is. And so they get to teach a number of activities, and if Rich doesn't cover that, I'll cover some more of that. They're getting on to Marine Corps Base Camp Pendleton and the Devil Pups bivouac area, or the garrison area. One of the exercises they do is by the time they leave, they get to jump off a 25-foot tower, which, 25 feet doesn't seem that high, but when you're up on top of a tower, it might as well be the Empire State Building to some of us that have fear of heights. And of course, this is all under the watchful guidance of specially selected Marine Corps non-commissioned officers. And these are the kids that get issued full packs, and they get ready for this legendary hike up Old Smoky, which is right outside the School of Infantry at Camp Pendleton. That's Old Smoky, and you think, hey, how hard can that be? It just looks like a fire break. Well, it's hard, and it overlooks the Pacific Ocean and the School of Infantry, and you can see right there that Marine is shaking the hand of Gilberto Nunez, who you might recognize that name. He was here just a few weeks ago. He's one of those that your board recognized that helped the Northeast Library move all their books. So he was one of the honorees of one of the top awards out of the 300 kids from the whole western U.S. He received a recognition for his fortitude, and there's only a few of those awards out, and they're also receiving a challenge coin. And this year, we also, in addition to him, we had Norma Piercy, who got an award for perseverance. Right there is Paulette Rios and Louis Anchondo. They both got perfect PFTs. They got 400 points. And we have two other kids, teens rather, Ashley Vega and Caleb Lopez, that are here with us today that got perfect PFTs as well. And that's a pretty big thing because all week long they've been spoken to sternly, and then at the end of the week they get congratulated by these Marines that have been helping along. They get a big motivational talk at the end of that hike from the commanding officer of the detachment and Colonel Denicky, and then we do colors up on top of what that's called Alpha Shelf right there overlooking Camp Pendleton. And then they finally culminates in an impressive graduation ceremony on July 29th at the School of Infantry parade deck. And you can see we're represented there by our Easy Up that's got Kern County Double Pups, and the kids realize that there really is such a time in the day as 04:30 or 0 dark 30 in the morning. And it's a challenging experience for them, it's rewarding for them, and it's also rewarding for the Marines that participate in the program. They either decide from that point on, if they don't have kids already, they're never going to have teenagers, or they decide this is something they really love doing, and it's a wonderful leadership opportunity. About a week ago, we had an awards and recognition ceremony. Our keynote speaker was Sheriff Donnie Youngblood, and we recognized all the kids, and they had certificates of recognition, including a certificate from your board signed by all 5 of you board members. And this is our Mr. Garcia and Mrs. Garcia talking to our kids at graduation. And you can see we had a decent turnout. That was over at the Larry Ryder Learning Center at 2000 K Street. So with that, I would like to again introduce Mr. Rich Linsday, the president and CEO of Devil Pups Incorporated.
Well, thank you for allowing me to say a couple of words. I'm not going to steal any of his thunder. Dick has done a wonderful, wonderful job for us. But Kern County is something that you may not know has contributed over 700 boys and girls to this program. Over 700 that have graduated in your community. And amongst all the different locations that we have, that is the 3rd largest where we've continued the program here, I believe, since 1971. So just really, really amazing. And the whole thing about the program is growth through challenge. We try to challenge the boys and girls mentally, physically. We also try to get them to understand that you have to be we to succeed in life and not just me, which is the teenage mantra, I think. It's all about me. So we do a lot of team exercises, and the goal is to build up their self-esteem. So I think if you had seen them leave on the day they went and then had an opportunity to see them graduate, you would have seen an amazing catharsis in just 10 days. So on behalf of the Board of Directors, I'd like to thank each and every one of you for supporting the program here in Kern County. Excellent results year after year after year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Linsday. So real quick, I'm going to read through, I'm watching the time. I'm going to read through the names of our teens, and I'd like to understand that after that, I would like to recognize our volunteers that make this program what it is. And also I would be remiss if I didn't thank Sheriff Youngblood and the Kern County Sheriff's Office for being an integral part of the support of the program and allowing us to use some of their facilities. So not all these kids are here today because it's the middle of the week and a lot of them are getting ready to start school tomorrow, I think, and some of them were going to sneak in a family vacation before they came. So as I call your name, you can stand up if you're not here. Obviously, you're not standing up. Antonio Aguilera, Luis Anchondo, Jesus Diaz Alcala, Gabriel Espinoza, Leopoldo Fernandez, Alexander George, Joshua Golston, Jacob Golston, Derek Gustafson, James Hollingsworth, Colton Hunt, Haley Hutton, Holman Key, Caleb Lopez, and I might add Caleb was one of those that got a perfect PFT, Cameron Ludwig, Simone Medrano, Gavin Munchow, Gilberto Nunez, Norman Piercy, Fox Piercy, they just moved to Texas, Paulette Rios, Adriana Rodriguez, Ty Shepard, Brady Sparks, Ashley Vega, Thomas Wills, and Brandon Wren. And I want to give them a big round of applause. Okay, and I'm going to try to not forget anybody. So in addition to these wonderful people that are volunteers, we all do this because we love doing it, because it's very rewarding to see youth reach their full potential. We have several other volunteers. We have Paul Madriz with the Bakersfield Police Department, and also Joe Armijo with the Bakersfield Police Department, Manny Lopez. And so Paul Madriz served in the Marine Corps, comes out and is one of the instructors that hikes them up Federal Hill and gets them ready to go to camp. We find that the instances of kids getting injured and dropping out when they get down there are almost down to nil now because he gets them ready ahead of time. Joe Armijo graduated from Devil Pups in 2008. He was a Kern County Sheriff's Deputy. Now he's a Bakersfield Police Department officer. And Manny Lopez is a retired gunnery sergeant from the U.S. Marine Corps, and he asked one day if we needed help, and you know how that ended up. So we said, darn right. And then his son, Manny, is also a Kern County Sheriff's Deputy as well. So in standing over here, I'm going to have him stand up real quick, a couple of former Devil Pups, Brandon Peffer, and then we have our Brandon Lopez, who also went down as an Eagle. That means they can go back down a second time to help out as a mentor. They pay their own way. They run around, do everything. As long as it's legal, ethical, and moral, they do it for Sergeant Major Bud Deach to take care of the program. So phenomenal program. Thank you to your board for your support over the years of this. It means a lot to us, means a lot to the kids. And just about the time that all of us think that we're totally done for as a nation with regard to our youth, these are perfect shining examples that there's hope. And I think these are people you're going to see are going places. And as the example of Joe Armillo and others, that manifests itself. They come back and give back to the community. Again, thank you to your board and for everybody that has helped out. And of course, their parents are here as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dick. Congratulations to our Kern County youth that participated, and thanks to you, Mr. Taylor, and all the volunteers for working with the kids and keeping the program going. Thank you. All right, next item on our agenda is going to be public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. So I'll ask at this time if there are any members of the audience that would like to make a public presentation. Please come forward. We ask that you state your name and observe our 2-minute time limit. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Savannah Lee. That's SAVANNAHLEE. And I'm speaking on behalf of the World Mission Society Church of God in Bakersfield. So we have come this morning to introduce ourselves, as we've done also with the City Council. We are actually we're an international Christian church. It's non-denominational, and we are based out of South Korea. So we actually believe in the second coming Christ Ansanghong, as well as the existence of Heavenly Mother. And the reason that we are actually here is because we are actually making a big impact around the world. I think this last July, in the beginning of July, we did the 3,558th cleanup campaign in the world. So we're doing cleanup campaigns all over the world. We're getting involved with the communities. And I think most noteworthy, we actually received in 2016 the Queen's Award, signed by the Queen herself. And we were also invited to the United Nations meeting in their headquarters in New York. So that's the first time that a church organization has actually been invited to the UN meeting. And then really exciting, last year, or actually in April of this year, we won one of the Group Volunteer of the Year awards for Bakersfield. So we're really excited to be in Bakersfield. We were established here about 6 years ago, so a little bit new in Bakersfield. But like I said, we're international. So we have over 5,000 churches in the world in 175 countries. So the reason we came today to introduce ourselves is because we want to be a helping hand. Of course, we know that churches, out of the goodness of their hearts, they want to get involved with the community. But we're actually here to say, please call us. Please let us help you. So about 2 years ago, I got in touch with John Enriquez from Keep Bakersfield Beautiful, and he's been helping us get involved in many different ways, even outside of Keep Bakersfield Beautiful. We're hoping to do a fire department and police department appreciation event sometime soon, as well as getting involved with the Boy Scouts, the neonatal unit, many different parts of Bakersfield that need help, need love, and need just some attention. So if there's anything that we can do for you, please give us a call and let us come out and help you cleaning the communities, etc. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for coming and introducing yourself to the board. For those of us that aren't familiar with you, I'd ask if you could leave some contact information with Mr. Alsop there in the gray suit. So the board members, if they'd like to follow up with you, we would have that opportunity. And Perfect. Thank you so much for your work in the community.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are there any other public statements? Okay, seeing none, then we'll move on to board member announcements or reports. Do you have any, Supervisor Maggard?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am wanting to speak just for a moment this morning about the new email system that we have, the communication system we use in the county. And I am enjoying it. I think we're off to a good start. I think it would be useful if we would ask our users for suggestions on how it might be improved. One observation, for example, that I have made and others have conveyed to me, they have made is that it appears to be, it links all of the emails in a string of conversation together, and it's a bit cumbersome to send a response to one person or to forward that message without the possibility of forwarding it to everyone. So it might be helpful to have a couple tutorials for everyone in the county about how to use the system a little bit more. But it's off to a good start. I'm grateful. It is so much better than GroupWise was, and I'm happy that we have it. But looking forward to how we can make sure that everybody knows how to use it to its fullest potential. So you don't have to get back to me, in public or anything about that. I just think I'm saying it in public because I think lots of our county employees are having the same kind of issues, and look forward to resolving those. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Any other board members? Okay, I do have one. I wanted to ask the county administrative officer if they could come back with a report on community choice aggregation. I made a referral some months back on the issue, and we've been in discussions about it. I think we've had at least 2 or 3 meetings on the issue, but I'd like maybe in 30 days' time or so, if the CAO could come back with a board letter and the board can make a determination on whether or not we'd like to go out and do a feasibility study and further analysis of opportunities we might have here. Mr. Alsop, would you like to respond?
We'll do that.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, you pulled the microphone down. I thought you were ready to enlighten us with some.
Sure.
Okay, thank you very much.
We do it. Yep.
Okay, so that's just a request. I don't think we need a motion. I've already made a formal referral on the item. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on then to item 24 on our agenda. There are several items under the fire department today that are off consent, items 24 through 28. And so we're going to hear these items concurrently, but we will be voting separately on them. They have to do with several contracts between our fire department and incorporated cities in Kern County. And so we have Chief Brian Marshall with us. And Chief, we'll ask you to start us off, please.
Good morning, Chairman Scrivener, members of the board. To recap, we're bringing back 3 contracts that the fire department brought forth on July 11th, and your board asked us to bring those back with additional contracts that we've been negotiating. Your board approved the Ridgecrest contract on June 20th. Maricopa, Taft, and Wasco were the items on the July 11th board meeting. And then also today we have Tehachapi and McFarland. Delano is not in this contract cycle, so you won't see that contract. And the city of Arvin and Shafter, we're still in negotiations. We've met with Arvin, and we look forward to bring a contract to your board in October. And we're still working on the Shafter contract. I believe it's important that we address the contracts that we have before us today to get those approved and resolved and move on to the other contracts. So to go through just the contract methodology, just so we're all on the same page, we use a complex methodology that was developed and approved by your board prior to the original contracts in 2007. Prior to that, the cities had their own fire department, and they turned over fire services for Fire Fund in the mid-1980s. Your board directed a previous fire chief to go out and get city contracts with these incorporated cities, which the fire department did, and this is our third go-around with city contracts. So the methodology involves average actuals for what it costs to provide emergency services and the amortized fleet schedule. We put those together and come up with an operational cost of nearly $119 million. We also look at population. The Kern County Fire Department protects roughly 540,000 people across the county, and that creates a direct cost per capita countywide of $221.44. And then our methodology takes in the city's staffing ratio as we protect these cities. And we have roughly 31 firefighters on duty every day protecting the cities. And our countywide staffing is 161 firefighters. This is not support people, but these are the firefighters in the fire station responding to emergencies. That provides a staffing ratio of 19.46%. When you take that figure, put it all together, the direct cost per city per capita is $43.10. That is true across the board with all of our contract cities. Every city pays that same amount. We do add in our indirect, which in this contract cycle is 12.71%. And that creates a cost to the cities. The direct cost and indirect cost are added up, and we come up with a total cost for the city, and then we subtract out fire fund. Fire fund is the property taxes that are collected to support and fund the Kern County Fire Department. That leaves a net allocated cost to each of the cities. If the city generates more fire fund, their allocated cost goes down. If a city's population increases, their total cost of services would go up. Those are the factors. And as you look at the contracts as we go through them, you may notice some cities pay less, but that's generally because they have either a small population or a very good fire fund that's coming in. But the contract methodology across the board, with the exception of the city of McFarland, every city is paying the same. We're using the same contract methodology. So the first contract before your board today is for the City of Maricopa. That has been before your board. And the City of Maricopa, their allocated cost for fire protection is $56,790 in the first year. They do generate $31,609 in fire fund, leaving a first-year payment to the Kern County Fire Department of $25,181. The next contract, again, your board has seen before, is the City of Taft. City of Taft allocated cost for this fiscal year is $459,369, but they retain fire fund. There is a little bit of fire fund that the county does have of $153, so it leaves a first year cost for the City of Taft of $459,216. The next contract before your board is the City of Wasco. City of Wasco's allocated cost is $1,028,771, and they collect $531,620 in fire fund property tax, leaving a payment due to the Kern County Fire Department in the first year of $497,151. A new contract before your board for the first time is the City of Tehachapi. City of Tehachapi is their allocated cost, $442,075. The City of Tehachapi generates $424,894 in fire fund. They're a very healthy city, and that leaves a net allocated cost to the City of Tehachapi to pay the Kern County Fire Department $17,180 in the first year. As with all of these contracts, they're 5-year agreements, and we take a CPI escalator in each of the year to generate the total contract amount. The last contract before your board is the City of McFarland. That has been a challenge for the Kern County Fire Department. City of McFarland contracted in 1984 with the Kern County Fire Department for fire fund revenue. And in 2007, the previous fire chief attempted to get a contract with the city of McFarland, and their revenue stream was not there and were unable to negotiate a contract. This has been going on, as I said, since 2007. Your current executive staff of the fire department has made it a priority to get a contract with the city of McFarland. We have been in negotiations literally for the last 2 years to try to bring this to a resolution. We've had contracts before their city council, and one was rejected. We went back to the drawing board with the city of McFarland, and their basic question that they posed to us is, we don't have any money to pay for fire services. We can't execute a contract. We continue to work with McFarland and negotiate, and it became very clear that we had to get some sort of contract in place to allow the city to move forward with some sort of revenue stream where they can pay for fire services. We have negotiated, as I've mentioned, with all of the cities. There's 2 outstanding contracts that we believe will be before your board before the end of the year. City of McFarland, we've never been able to get there. And what we're bringing forward today to your board is what I would view a temporary contract, an interim contract to generate revenue for the fire department, to show the city of McFarland that we're serious about our fire protection contracts, and allow the city 2 years to generate some sort of revenue stream to fund the fire department at what the cost should be. Let me give you just an idea of what the actual contract, if it was compared with our other contract cities. Based on contract methodology that I've mentioned before, the McFarland's allocated total cost is $681,912, and they generate $270,000 in fire fund revenue, leaving a contracted amount of roughly $411,242. They've told us they can't pay that amount. In our negotiations, to come up with an interim agreement that was satisfactory to the city of McFarland, we used the amount of $50,000 in year 1 and $100,000 in year 2 to generate some revenue to the county fire department. In the contract and in the negotiations, it was made very clear to the city manager and the city council that they have 2 years to come up with some sort of revenue stream, whether that be a public safety sales tax, developer impact fees, or whatever they choose. But we now have 2 years to generate a long-term contract that follows the same methodology that all the cities pay. We've made it very clear to the city of McFarland that this is the only option. Strategically speaking, the city of McFarland is important to the Kern County Fire Department, that fire station, and if I can have the document camera up, please. This is Station 33's response area, and you can see the blue in the middle is the city of McFarland. Station 33 covers a very large response area, including the state responsibility area that CAL FIRE pays us to protect. We use a geographic county-wide response system. A week and a half ago, we had the Calgary Fire in Wofford Heights. Patrol and Engine 33 responded from McFarland to the Kern River Valley to protect the citizens that were in harm's way due to the Calgary Fire. Station 33 also responds into Delano and Wasco. Again, not one fire station stands alone. It's a county-wide fire protection system, and that station is located where it does serve the county of Kern and the Kern County Fire Department very well. It covers a large chunk of Highway 99 and Highway 46. So it is very important. And that's why we kept negotiating with the City of McFarland. But we realize if we're not able to execute a long-term contract, there needs to be some sort of negotiation where the City of McFarland begins their own fire department, because we cannot continue to subsidize the City of McFarland. So what we have today is an interim contract, in my mind, of $50,000 the first year, $100,000 in the next year, and it's all on the City of McFarland now to generate some sort of revenue to pay the full cost of services. Again, we've been negotiating for several years. It's been a frustrating process. It's by no means over, but this does give us some sort of revenue stream to help support our operations in the City of McFarland. So that concludes my report on all the contracts that are before your board. We can have discussion now at this time and then bring back all the contracts separately, and I'll read the language for your board to approve the contracts. So that completes my presentation, and we're available for any questions your board may have.
Thank you, Chief Marshal. I'll first go to the public, ask if there's any members of the audience that would like to make any comment on any of these items 24 through 28. Good morning.
Good morning, Supervisors and Mr. Chairman. Lon Boyer representing the City of Taft. The reason I'm here today, first of all and foremost, is to assure you that we really do enjoy the relationship that we have with the Kern County Fire Department and are very appreciative of the proposed 5-year contract with the city. It's been a wonderful win-win situation, at least in our opinion, for the city, and I believe the fire chief feels the same way in that regard. Our concern is that all agencies are treated the same, equitably, and the costs are distributed equally and equitably. As the fire chief mentioned, I know you're really looking into those aspects right now, but we believe that all agencies should be responsible for their fair share of the costs. With that, thank you.
Thank you. Would you please spell your name for the
Absolutely. Clerk? Lon, L-O-N-N, last name Boyer, B-O-Y-E-R.
Thank you, Mr. Boyer.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Mike Turnipseed representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association. I guess there's one question. They've had 10 years of non-payment. What makes you think they're going to change their ways and fund this thing in 2 years? And if they don't, what happens then? What's the exit strategy for this plan? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to the Chief. Chief Marshal, do you have a response? We did get a question from Mr. Turnipseed as far as what's the exit strategy if payment at the conclusion of the 2-year period of time is not paid in the same methodology as the other cities?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, an exit strategy will have to be developed working with your board. But what I foresee is the City of McFarland forming some sort of their own fire department and taking over fire services for their city, and the Kern County Fire Department only providing mutual aid as we do with our other cities and surrounding areas. As we've said, this is an interim contract. The City of McFarland needs to figure a way to fund the Kern County Fire Department or fund their own fire department.
Okay. Thank you. So if they are unable to identify a revenue stream and pay the full costs at the conclusion of the 2-year interim contract, then you will implement an exit strategy at that time. Is that your plan?
I believe, Supervisor Scrivener, that we will be working with the city over the next 2 years, and the exit strategy will be developed sooner. We won't wait till the end of the 2-year agreement.
Thank you. I was speaking as to the implementation, not the development. Obviously, we'll have to develop it ahead of time. Thank you. Mr. Turnipseed, sure.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Mike Turnipseed representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association. So if we don't have a plan with McFarland, does that mean closing the fire station in McFarland? If you don't come to it? Or are you still going to be there, and when a house burns, you're still going to end up responding just because that's what you have to do? That's, I guess, the question of where this is really going.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is the county prepared to shut the station down?
Thank you. Chief, would you like to respond?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, the McFarland Fire Station is important to the Kern County Fire Department. Again, it's a county-wide fire protection system. We could serve Station 33's response area from other fire stations throughout the region. If we did shut that station down, and that would be a decision that we would work, the fire department would work with your board, but it is a very distinct possibility that Station 33 would be shut down and resources allocated to areas of the county that need additional services.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. All right. I don't see any other questions or comments, so I'll return to the board. Supervisor Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A bunch of questions for you. Thank you, Chief. Are we going to vote on this one at a time or as a cluster?
Yes, we're going to. We heard the items concurrently, but we are going to vote separately.
Well termed. Well, let me. Before we begin the voting process, and since you're up here and we're on the topic, let's talk about McFarland a little bit. Explore that. I got a bunch of questions about the finances, but the first comment I want to make is I don't for the life of me understand why they went for so long without offsetting any costs other than their fire fund, any costs for that fire station. I guess it's one of the hidden, and I use this term carefully, benefits of the fiscal crisis we're in, is we're beginning to identify our shortfalls and how we perhaps can tighten things up throughout the county. And this is a glaring example of, I think, an abuse that has happened that we have allowed to happen, and it's not fair to Mr. Boyer with his comments. It's not fair to anybody, any other community that is paying for their fire station wise in McFarland. So I don't know how we got here. I honestly don't know how we got here, but I do know that we've had several conversations with the mayor in the past year, and we have relayed to the mayor and the city manager my steadfast opinion that they will, if the board would agree, this plan will move forward, but it will come to a conclusion where in 2 years' time they pay for their fair share of their fire station, or we pull out. Now, let's talk about that for a second, because I think that has a lot of unintended consequences, or it has a lot of circumstance to it. So my recommendation now, where I'm talking to the mayor and with the fire chief and city manager, is that, and my recommendation to them in the conversation is going to be that that I'm going to vote in favor of this because it grows them from paying nothing gradually into offsetting the costs, their fair share, about $411,000. They're going to go from $50,000 to $100,000, and then the third year, and all years beyond that, they pay their fair share. So we're growing them from paying nothing to giving them an opportunity to get into this full cost-sharing agreement. We also have a requirement that if they don't pull out, or if they don't find a funding source to offset the cost of $411,000, that we pull out. And that's going to be my recommendation. That is a firm opinion of mine. That is not going to change. I can't see it changing unless something dramatic happens. But I'm saying that in order for us to process to pull out, that means that we have to give them a 365-day notice that we're going to do so, because as an incorporated entity, jurisdiction, they have a responsibility to provide fire services for their constituents. If they can't contract with us to provide those services, they need to provide those services solely. So what in the conversations, what I'm recommending is that we pass this deal, this growth plan, and then in 1 year from now, we issue them a letter saying that in 365 days, we're pulling out unless you come up with a way to pay the $400,000, $411,000. Okay, so that's my opinion. That's what I think we should do to force the function. And if that happens, if after 2 years they don't pay because they haven't been able to, where are we at? And we pull out. What does that consequence? Where are we going if we take my advice and go in this direction? We're going to have a city that has no contract with the fire department, and that we are not going to provide fire services for their constituents, and so they're going to have to come up with the costs because it's a requirement of an incorporated city. Is that correct?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, that's correct. Cities are required to have a fire department.
What's the cost of that fire? What is that going to cost them if we pull out in 2 years? What is that going to cost them?
Supervisor Gleason, the average fire station in the Kern County Fire Department costs $1.8 million a year to staff and operate. And that does not include fire station cost and fire apparatus replacement.
So they're going to have to come up with either $411,000 per year or something to the tune of $1.8 million a year, correct?
To have equal services. And
what is their minimum requirement that they must comply with if we pull out in 2 years? What do they absolutely have to do? How much money?
That would be determined by what type of fire department they created. They could create a paid fire chief's position with all volunteers, but they still have to buy fire trucks, create some sort of fire station, maintain the training, and then I really don't know what they're going to do for those specialized response, such as hazardous materials, technical rescue, all of the services that all of the county citizens, the incorporated cities, benefit from a paid professional fire department such as your Kern County Fire Department.
Right. Is it fair to say, well, I don't know you have a good answer for this one, but is it fair to say that if we pull out, if we follow my course of action, and in 2 years, if they don't come up with a way to offset the $411,000 and we pull out, is that an existential threat to the community, to the incorporated city of McFarland? Does the city of McFarland recognize they have all of a sudden a cost they can't meet and they must meet and they dissolve? Do you know the answer to that question?
Just a few thoughts on that, Supervisor Gleason, through the chair. One of the things that is important to all of us as citizens that own property, if there's not a fire station, if there's not firefighters and fire trucks to respond to your emergency, you can't get fire insurance. You can't build new buildings. You can't generate additional revenue. And I would hope the city of McFarland, their elected leaders, know that if they don't have a fire department, their city is going to be unable to grow because who's going to come in, and their residents are going to lose fire insurance on their homes.
So at the very least, what they're going to have to do is get a look at their city budget, which I don't know what it is, but they're going to have to reallocate $100 or $1.8 million or in that neighborhood of funds from whatever they have now, whether it's a new sheriff's station or a planning department or whatever they have. They're going to have to reallocate those dollars to a fire department, and that could be disastrous for that community. Correct?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, that would be my professional opinion. I agree.
But it's fair, in my opinion. It may be disastrous, but it's fair because all the other communities in Kern County are offsetting their costs or suffering what they have to suffer for in order to provide their constituents with adequate fire protection. So it's not a question of fair or unfair. It's a question of determination and our ability to stay the course once we've selected a course of action. If they can't, and if they can't reallocate $1.8 million, and if they can't meet that after a series of years of trying to meet the requirements of this new fire budget, could be conceivable that they dissolve. And that's going to prove consequential to us. We need to understand that end zone of possibility of what that means to us if if we go down this course of action and the worst happens, what do we have to do in order to satisfy the constituents required of a newly unincorporated area? So I offer that for a food for thought for us to consider as we move down this course, because quite frankly, the tax base in McFarland is questionable as to whether or not they will pass the tax or they can meet the requirements of that $400,000. I know they're building a new sheriff's station, and that's because they don't have one. And they're trying to grow as a community and build themselves into something. I'm just not sure that they can do that while counting on the continued charity of Kern County in the way that we've been doing it. So I worry about this course of action. I think this is a very serious decision we're about to make, and I think we need to be very forthcoming on our communications with the City of McFarland, make sure they understand exactly where we're going and why we're going that direction, and we're determined to go a direction if we do decide what I am going to recommend when it comes time for that vote. So I think that hits all the numbers that I wanted to talk about. The exit strategy someone talked about is we're going to develop one, and we're going to start development of that exit strategy. We implement that exit strategy next year with the letter to McFarland saying you have 365 days to develop, or that's going to be my recommendation, or we move out. If someone has a better idea, I'm all ears. Okay. I just want to have a question I need to have answered, a general question. If we do pull out in a year, what does that mean for the fire stations at Delano and Shafter and surrounding areas? Are they going to be encumbered with additional responsibilities or not?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, if the McFarland Fire Station closed today, Wasco, Delano, even Shafter and Metropolitan Bakersfield would be impacted, responding into that large service area. And again, it's one less fire truck and firefighters to respond to the Calgary fire. So it does hamper our operations, and it would place increased demands on the surrounding fire stations.
Not only would it increase demands on the surrounding fire stations, but it would increase the risk that the constituents take in other communities, because all of a sudden they're going to be without a fire truck. Okay, so I guess the point of all my questions is to answer and is to demonstrate my resolve that this is an issue that has gone on way too long. It needs to be resolved. It needs to be resolved fairly. And if that fair resolution includes moving out of the City of McFarland, it will get my vote when the time comes, unless something else comes up. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm done.
Thank you, Supervisor Gleason. I have a question, Chief. I know that I think that you said that 365 days of notice is required before we would pull out of McFarland. Is that correct?
Chairman Scrivener, the termination clause is 6 months advance notification.
Okay, so
we would be working this time next year with the City of McFarland on either a new agreement or an exit strategy.
Okay, so it's not 365 days, it's 6 months. That's a minimum, so there wouldn't be anything that would prevent us from, if we did support what Supervisor Gleason is suggesting and give them 2 years of an interim contract and putting them on notice that at the conclusion of that 2-year period of time, they need to have a revenue stream in place or some means to pay the full amount. But there's nothing that would prevent us from issuing that letter now, because the 6 months is a minimum. So we could issue a letter putting them on notice that we will terminate our service without full payment come July 1, 2019. Do you agree that we could do that?
Chairman Scrivener, I think that's an excellent idea to put the City of McFarland on notice now. That it's our intention to either have a long-term contract with the standard methodology in place, or we will be exiting this contract and exiting the City of McFarland's fire protection. And I would defer to County Council on sending the letter now for their expert opinion.
Council, do you have any opinion on that? I'm asking for an opinion. I hope you have one.
I have lots of opinions. Yes, you could do it now.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Maggard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Of all of the responsibilities I feel as a supervisor elected to represent all the people of Kern County, the one that strikes me the strongest is my responsibility to be just. We need to treat everyone fairly and justly. I had a neighborhood come to me in my area with a long community fence that separated them from a very busy road, the back of these homes from a very busy road. It was about 4/10 of a mile long, and the fence fell over all at once, the whole thing. And there was no divider between the backyards of these homes and this very busy road. And they wanted me to have the government, the Kern County government, the taxpayers of Kern County. Nobody built that building or that wall rather, except for the developer of that project. And those homeowners each purchased a piece of that wall when they bought their homes. They wanted me to use the coffers, the treasure of the citizens of Kern County, to put up their 3 or 4/10 mile wall for them. I told them I couldn't do that. It wasn't fair to ask the people of Lamont and the people of Arvin and the people of Taft and the people of Maricopa to pay for a wall that they were responsible to maintain. I think this is a very similar circumstance. The people in McFarland have elected folks and appointed people to run their community, and they haven't done their job adequately. Is it just, is it fair to require everyone in Kern County to pull from the treasure of all the citizens of this community to give a substantial benefit to one group because of their lack of having maintained what they should have maintained on their own? That issue of justice is significant to me. I think this agreement is lacking in two ways. The first is it needs to have an element that has repayment in it. They owe the people of Kern County for the services that they've received. Can we be generous and extend very generous terms about how they will repay it? I'm open to that idea, but they need to repay it. It isn't fair to everyone else that they not have to ever pay. And if we don't craft an agreement that moves us through and beyond that, we are enabling the same results that we now have, in my opinion. So as difficult as this is for that community, I think that this may very well be what Supervisor Scrivener has somewhat in mind. I think that it isn't a matter that we should give them notice in 6 months. This agreement signed by them, the signature lines on this document are clear. The city attorney in McFarland, the mayor of McFarland, the city manager of McFarland, the city clerk of McFarland, representing all of the elected officials in McFarland, those signatures are on that agreement. And that agreement, in my opinion, should have in the agreement that we eventually approve here, that agreement should have in it the elements that say, on this date you shall have this accomplished. On this date you will have moved through the process. So there are a series of dates by the end of which they will either have accomplished a standalone department or they will have repaid us. And it should also contain language that says, with your full knowledge, if you don't hit these dates, you are agreeing with us at the outset of this agreement that the Kern County Fire Department will no longer render services to you effective this date. So I don't think it goes far enough. I think it could go one step further. And it's the same concept, I think, that Supervisor Scrivener just suggested, but it's just taken it one step further because it's in this agreement. And they sign with the responsibility of their office and the people that they represent. Each of them sign indicating that they agree going in that if they don't hit these marks, that they know what the consequence will be. They have, in fact, agreed to the consequence. Because what I think is very likely is they'll get to the other end of this, and if they have not been able to perform as we expect them to perform, they will plead all kinds of rationale to us about why it isn't fair and why they didn't fully understand. And the typical stuff we get from from some of these. This isn't the first time this has happened. So it seems to me that we should make this agreement have all of those elements in it, and to use the phrase that Mr. Turnipseed said a moment ago, I guess it is that exit strategy. It is crystal clear to them at the outset, and they have in fact agreed to what that exit strategy is when at the outset of this agreement, not at a subsequent date. If we're going to do this, they at the outset tell us that they understand fully what the consequences will be and endorse and embrace them. My suggestion.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Supervisor, Mr. Turnipseed, I close the public.
Quick question now, and I'll be done.
All right, come forward, please.
Michael Turnipseed, representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association and taxpayers. What happens to the people that live in McFarland that pay their property taxes and pay the fire tax? That they're paying for protection. Does that enable you to walk out, or what liability is that going to create for the county? Because that hasn't been talked about yet.
Sure.
Because the citizens are paying, it's the city that's the problem. So how do we protect taxpayers? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Turnipseed. Chief, I don't know if you'd like to address that question now, but just in regards to the fire fund, I think is what he's referencing, and so what in fact would happen with the fire fund, because currently the county collects that and that offsets some of the amount of the cost of the station.
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, yes, the City of McFarland, their residents do pay fire fund. Their fire fund revenue for 17-18 is $270,000, $271,000. As I've said before, we do provide mutual aid to cities that we don't have a contract. California City is one. They have their own fire department. We provide mutual aid, automatic aid. So mutual aid's built on a reciprocal system. They help us, we help them. We go across county borders, Tulare, San Luis, LA, we do assist. It's going to be a discussion that we're going to have with County Council on retaining the fire fund. That discussion hasn't happened yet, but if we did pull out, that discussion and an opinion from County Council would need to come forward.
Okay, thank you, Chief. And one other question. If I think Supervisor Maggard, I want to make sure that I understood one of the things that you suggested. I think that it was suggesting that there should be some retroactive payment for the years in which we were providing service, and that would be since 2007, and not receiving any payment. Is that correct, sir?
Yes, some agreement to repay some of the costs that they've incurred that they have not paid.
Thank you. And Chief, did you have any discussions with them along those lines for the years between 2007 and now 2017, so in the last 10 years?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, not in that context. We were trying to negotiate a full contract. One contract presented had the full amount with some discounts to allow them to get to where they needed to go, but a repayment has never been discussed.
Have there been any cities since you've been chief, or maybe in the years prior that you have knowledge of, that had not paid the full amount, and in latter years they had been negotiated and therefore had been required to pay any amount retroactively, or has that ever happened, or has that amount not been required to be repaid?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, an example of the fire department working with the cities is the City of Maricopa. The original contract was negotiated and put into place in 2007. The original contract amount for that fiscal year was $16,209. The City of Maricopa was unable to pay that amount. In 2008, they were only able to pay $4,000, and again in 2009. In 2010, they were unable to make any payment, but in 2011, they began a catch-up. That payment due to the Kern County Fire Department in 2011 was $20,000. They made a payment of $56,000. And then in the next contract period, they began to pay additional money to catch them up. And I can say the City of Maricopa is paid all of their debt in the past and is current with this fiscal year billings.
Okay, so just so I'm clear, they did pay all of the amounts that they had not paid in the past, and now they are paying their full share. Is that a fair synopsis?
That's correct,
Okay.
Chairman Scrivener.
So there is a track record of allowing incorporated cities in Kern County to pay their full amount over a period of time, and in this case, with Maricopa, they were required to pay a retroactive amount to catch up for what they hadn't paid. Did I understand that correctly?
Chairman Scrivener, we had an executed contract. They were not able to pay the full amount in various years, but they did pay additional monies in subsequent years to pay, to catch up and pay on time, and they are current as of July.
So the difference here is that Maricopa had an executed contract but was unable to honor the full terms of that agreement for financial reasons. And in this case with McFarland, there has been no contract in place. This would be the first one since, I don't know when, I mean, at least 2007.
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, the original contract that we executed with the City of McFarland was done in the mid-'80s, and that was for fire fund retention only. The new contracts with a different methodology, negotiations began in the mid-2000s, and the first executed contracts with the city were in 2007. So the Kern County Fire Department's been negotiating since 2007. I've made it a priority as the fire chief to get this contract in place. This was even before the fiscal crisis we faced because it was the right thing to do. But we have not had a contract since basically 1989 with the City of McFarland.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Couch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's the story about Maricopa that gives me the most heartburn. It's a relatively small amount of money in real terms, but that amount of money in Maricopa's budget is significant. And the thing that I keep thinking in the back of my head is, man, if Maricopa can do it, anybody ought to be able to do it, because they really struggle a lot. But they have prioritized public safety. And I appreciate about that city, their city management, and their city council. It's a difficult position we're in. I recognize that we have not had a contract for a long time. Shame on us for that, but that's on us. I would be willing to support this if there was a catch-up provision for at least the 2 years from the time this started, because there is no contract in place right now. I recognize Supervisor Maggard's desire. I share that, but I don't know how we can go back in time and say, we recognize you didn't have a contract, but we'd like you to pay for all those years that we were negligent. That's the piece of the puzzle that I think is missing in this. I recognize, Chief, your efforts, and I appreciate all of them. I think you were up against, and I'll just say this, I have heard that there's a particular individual that is I'll say an official from the City of McFarland that gloats about the fact that they have not paid like all the other cities have paid, and that they are essentially gaming the county with this contract. And it bothers me that we have partners that would speak that way, because I don't believe you would do that, and I don't think we would talk about our partners that way. I know this board would not do that. So I don't know where we are on that. There hasn't been a motion made yet. I appreciate your work. I just wanted to let you know that that's the element that really bothers me, that Maricopa did this, they struggled, they paid it back, but they had a contract. So until we have a contract, I think it's difficult for us to go back in time. And as much as I would like to, Supervisor Maggard, I'd like to make them pay from 1989 till to present. But I don't know if we can do that. Thank you.
Supervisor Couch, I agree with you. I think it would be very difficult, if not impossible, to require that they paid for the years that they didn't have a contract in place. But payment in arrears for the 2 years for the interim contract, the differential between what they would be paying and what they should be paying, having some kind of a repayment plan for that when we, in the event that we're able to arrive at a contract at the conclusion of the 2-year interim contract, I think would be a good thing for us to attempt to negotiate. Chief, do you have any thoughts on that?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, if we're able to negotiate some sort of contract, we'll get right on it if that's your board's direction to the fire department.
Well, what my thought is we send a letter as I described and Supervisor Maggard expanded on, that would first state our intention to pull out of the City of McFarland or not provide service at the conclusion of this interim contract if a contract isn't signed for full payment beginning July 1, 2019, but also our intention to negotiate with them for payment in arrears or retroactive payment to cover the differential between July 1st, 2017 and June 30th, 2019, so for that 2-year interim period of time. I don't know the thoughts of my colleagues, and Supervisor Gleason, it's your district, and so we're certainly interested in your thoughts on that proposal. Thank you.
You'll hear Mr. Chairman.
I'm looking for a motion first of all of some sort, or at least I'd like to know your thoughts on that. But ultimately, I'd like to get some kind of a motion on this.
Okay, are we voting on this particular item? When
No.
we do, I'm prepared to make my comments.
Okay. Well, we do have items 24, 25, 26, 27 that didn't get any lengthy discussion from our board. So perhaps we could get motions on those items, and I'd ask for approval, and then we can deal with item 28. So do we have a motion on item 24?
Motion on staff's recommendation.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Thank you. The vote is all ayes.
Thank you. And now item 25, dealing with the City of Taft.
Motion on staff's recommendation, and thank you to Mr. Boyer for being here today.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And now item 26, City of Wasco.
Motion on staff's recommendation.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
And item 27, City of Tehachapi.
Mr. Chairman, the chairman usually does not make motions. This is City of Tehachapi. Are you in favor of a motion to approve this
I
contract?
am. Thank you for asking.
Motion to approve item number 27.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
That
Okay.
motion is approved. All ayes.
Excuse me. Thank you, Madam Clerk. And now item 28, Supervisor Gleason.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me get organized here. Okay, I'm glad to hear that the resolve of this board is in tune with my resolve, and we are in a general sense in agreement that what has happened in the City of McFarland is not fair, it's not just, it's not in concert with the way we do business. I like the other ideas that some other board members made to augment my initial premise, and that is, so my motion is going to be this, and let's see if it captures what we've talked about so far. I'd like to send a letter. I think that's a good idea, letting McFarland know on a formal basis that before we enter any permanent contract with them, they need to understand that the contract will, upon date of signing, will include payment every year for the total expenses that their fire department. Meaning that we can give them this growth period, this 2-year growth period, where we charge them $50,000, $100,000, and in the 3rd year they begin full payment. But during that interim period, when they have that benefit that we're giving them, that they've got to repay go back in those 2 years, beginning the first day of our newly signed contract, and compensate us for the entire cost of their fire services for those 2 years, beginning in year 1. That's my motion.
So would we have a? I think the recommendation of staff would be at the conclusion of this interim period of time, 2 years, that it would be a 10-year contract subsequent to that. Is that right? And so my thought, and I hope this is what you were intending, would be that the shortfall for their payments for the 2 years in the interim contract will be spread out over that 10-year period, not all due in the first year of the new 10-year contract?
That's fine.
Okay. If that's acceptable to the board, to me, that seems fair. Do we have any other comments from members of the board? Supervisor Maga, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So explain to me the benefit of sending them a letter, putting them on notice, being superior to the idea of changing this contract so the signers of the contract understand from the first moment of the contract that we will be exiting. It has all the same elements of the letter, except it's in the contract itself, evidenced by their signatures at the beginning. Why is the letter superior to changing the terms of the contract?
Can I answer that?
Supervisor Gleason?
I don't know that it is superior. I wouldn't say that it is superior. I think it is just a courtesy letter saying we are preparing a contract that meets the objectives of the agreements that we had in conversations with the mayor and the city manager. However, we are making the adjustment that they give us full compensation amortize it over some period of time for the first 2 years. That contract is being constructed and will be delivered at a certain timeline. And then having a letter saying the same thing is just an advance notice to give them some time. I don't know how long it's going to take to prepare that contract. How long will it take to prepare that contract?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, generally a contract, we use a standard methodology, standard template, so it wouldn't take too long to generate a contract for a period of 10 years.
So how long?
We could have it done within 30 days.
30 days. I think I'm prepared. I'm fully agreement that contract should read that way. I just think a letter notifying them that's our intent is a courteous thing to do.
So I just make sure I understand. I'm okay sending the letter, putting them on notice, but will the contract be modified so that it includes the elements that we've discussed?
Are you speaking to the 2-year interim contract?
The one that we're being asked to approve today?
Yes.
Oh, very good. Thank you very much. I'm in favor of it then.
Okay, so that's part of your motion, is to modify the contract as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Chief, do you understand that instruction? We have a request from County Council to speak.
Yes, thank you. I think you just clarified it, that what's on the agenda today is to approve the agreement as presented, and I believe the motion is in fact a rejection of that, and you are basically making a counter offer at this point. As long as everybody has that understanding, I think we're okay.
Okay, so you don't think it's required for us to refer this back to staff to have the language modified and then bring it back?
No.
The clerk and I were conferring when you were talking.
No, I don't believe so. If the direction is to reject the agreement as proposed and propose the modified agreement, you're basically making a counter proposal. You don't have to bring it back for approval.
Very good. Thank you. Supervisor Couch.
I want to make sure I understand. You discussed an amortization, or you mentioned amortization.
My suggestion was, because we were talking about paying the shortfall. During the interim period, they're not paying the full cost. We all understand that.
Right.
And so there is a shortfall.
Right.
And so if we want to require that shortfall is paid back, I was suggesting that that's spread out over the new 10-year contract versus payment in the first year of the 10-year contract for the shortfall of the prior 2 years under the interim. Is that clear?
This contract will be for 2 years, and upon or before it is its termination, we would be negotiating a new 10-year contract to begin at the end of the 2-year contract. And in that 10-year period, we would amortize whatever amount of money we're fronting over these 2 years.
That was my suggestion,
Is that correct?
yes.
Okay, I understand it. Thank you.
Is that understood, Chief?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, just for my clarification on this, that the agreement presented today for a 2-year contract of $50,000 the first year, $100,000 the second year would be approved and in place. And then the difference of what the actual contract should have been would be put into a schedule of the next contract, which would be 10 years. If we reject the contract, we'd have to go back to the negotiations with the city of McFarland to build that in, which is actually in a contract that hasn't even been presented yet.
Right. Yes, that's correct. Any other comments from members of the board? Supervisor Gleason.
Yes, I'm confused. Say again what's going on here. We are rejecting this contract. We are voting today to reject this contract. Is that correct?
That's what it sounds like to me.
Right. So we're rejecting this contract. This contract goes away. And then we're going to come back, notify them with a letter saying we will reinstitute the same terms of this contract, but we're going to change it to read that in years 3 through 10, you're going to offset the cost, repay us for the costs that were incurred from years 1 and 2. That's how I understand the situation. Is that what we're...
The term of this agreement is for only the interim period, is it not?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, we do not have a future contract. We only have this one here. If you reject this contract, we would have to go back to the negotiating table. And from what I understand, the repayment of the difference would be in a contract that hasn't even been presented yet.
And that's the way I see it.
It's problematic for the fire department.
So Mr. Nations, my understanding is that this is an approval of what's before us, the interim contract for 2 years, $50,000 and then $100,000 the second year. But as we negotiate, but the letter that we're sending is saying we're putting them on notice that we essentially expect full payment subsequent to that interim contract, and that will be a 10-year period, and the difference between what they're paying in the 2-year interim and what they should be paying under the methodology of all the other cities will be spread out to be repaid to us during the course of that subsequent 10-year contract. That's my understanding. Do any of the members of the board have a different understanding?
I do. If the county council would explain what you said, that'd help.
Well, based on what the chairman just commented, Supervisor Gleason, it sounds to me like you're prepared to accept this agreement in its current form, but put them on notice that you will be negotiating a separate agreement at a future time that is going to require them to repay the difference between what they normally should pay and what they are in fact paying under the interim agreement.
If other members of the board had a different intention with their comments, then I'd be interested in hearing it. But that's what I took away. Supervisor Maggard.
It's good that we're taking a moment to be crystal clear here. I think the agreement that is before us today would be improved if it includes language that causes the signers of the agreement to acknowledge that we will be departing. This gives us the option to depart. I think there's an advantage for those elected leaders to declare their agreement and acknowledgement that it will be ending. I think a change to this contract is beneficial to us. I'm completely comfortable with giving them the 10 years to pay it off. I'm willing to be generous about how to do that. But the essential part is for them to pay. So I think a modification to this contract would improve our circumstance. But I'm open to your thoughts about that.
Thank you. And so this contract that we have before us has been negotiated with them, and our understanding is that they are stand ready to approve it from their council, or perhaps I missed it. Perhaps it already has been. Has it already been approved by them?
Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, everybody's approved the contract. You're the last approval authority in fire department contracts.
So their council has approved the contract?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, so then this is going to require then, I believe, that we would refer this back to staff, and we'd have to negotiate that change with them because they've already approved the contract as it's written today. So unless we approve the contract today and then negotiate for the 10-year, we're going to have to refer it back to staff and have them come back. So that's, well, what's the will of the board as far as that's concerned?
Chairman Scrivener.
Supervisor Perez.
Thank you. I don't believe that it's likely a negotiation period post-contract agreement today will be very successful. I mean, the leverage that this body has to communicate a strong desire to be made whole in the capacity that this board has articulated today, or a majority of the board. So it would seem to me, unless it creates way too many problems for you, Chief, which I know you're in the process of negotiating a whole host of these, and it really don't want to take up more of your time unnecessarily. So, please be clear about that. Seems to me that leverage really is in the pre-contract stage if we expect to get something more than what they believe they were agreeing to in the four corners of that document. So my concern is, one, I don't think we'll have leverage post a vote to accept this contract, but two, that may create problems for you that I think are costlier in the long term. So if you could just clarify that, and I'd appreciate that because I'm eager to move these along and progress on these matters.
Supervisor Perez, through the chair, if we had to go back and renegotiate additional language in the contract, I don't believe we would be successful, and we would be working on an exit strategy right away.
That's my fear. That's my concern, Chairman, about putting that off. If the spirit of this agreement is in place, I think it, for a whole host of reasons, makes sense to proceed on it today, is just my general sentiment. But I'm very, very interested to hear from my colleagues and, of course, Supervisor Gleason.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, and that's why in my mind I thought we were going to approve this contract and then work towards the new 10-year agreement as far as the payment in arrears. Supervisor Couch?
I think I agree with what Supervisor Maggard said, that the element of the repayment in the next contract needs to be in this particular one. So I don't think I'm going to support that motion. Thank you.
Okay. Supervisor Gleason?
Okay, I agree with Supervisor Maggard and the intent of what he's talking about. However, I don't believe that we're going to get a contract approved, and that's going to put us behind the 8 ball. I think that we go forward with the 2-year contract, grow it to a new contract in year 3 or the new year 1, and that we send them a joint letter signed by the board that this contract is approved and contingent upon, well, it's not contingent, it is approved, but the follow-on contract will include recovering costs expended by the county in years 1 and 2, and that's my motion.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, 3 ayes, 2 opposed, Supervisor Couch and Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you. And that brings us to our final item on the agenda, item number 40, under Treasurer Tax Collector, presentation of the benefits of deferred compensation plans and transition to a new record keeper. I'll give time for the fire personnel to vacate the staff desk and for our Treasurer Tax Collector and his group. Oh, you're going to go from the front?
I'm just going to come from the podium here.
Okay. Good morning. Please
Thank
identify
you.
yourself.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jordan Kaufman, Kern County Treasurer and Tax Collector and Deferred Compensation Plan Administrator. And I'm here to talk to you today about what I consider the most exciting activities on the planet, which is deferred compensation. And so I hopefully won't spend more than 10 or 15 minutes. I do think this is an important item to discuss. There's going to be some changes in the deferred compensation program, and I want your board and all of the participants in the the plan to understand. So last week, your board approved all of the contracts necessary to transition all of the deferred compensation assets from our current record keeper, Empower Retirement, who we have had for many, many years, to a new record keeper, Voya Financial. And so today I wanted to talk about first just the benefits of deferred comp and some of the kind of plan characteristics. Then I wanted to talk about some of the specific benefits that participants will receive as a result of transitioning to the new record keeper, Voya Financial. And then lastly, I want to talk about some of the transition activities that are going to begin starting next week and then culminate in September when the assets actually transition. And so the deferred compensation plan for county employees has approximately $480 million in assets, and it has about 9,800 participants. About 4,500 participants are active participants, which means they are currently contributing to the deferred compensation program. And about 5,300 participants are inactive. And most of those folks are retired and they're actually drawing their money down, or they're currently employed and they're just not contributing at the moment. It's important to note also that while the majority of participants are Kern County employees, it also includes hospital authority employees, court employees, and the Kern County Water Agency employees. So we are actually a multi-employer plan, even though the majority of the participants are Kern County employees. There's actually two plans. There's the main plan, Plan 1, that is for the benefit of permanent employees, and then there's a smaller plan, Plan 2, which is for extra help employees. That plan is actually a mandatory plan that is a Social Security substitute. And so extra help employees are required to contribute into their account from their paycheck as a Social Security substitute. That's a much smaller plan, about $7 million. And so most of what I'm going to talk about going forward really applies to the larger plan, even though both plans are being transitioned to Voya Financial. Obviously, one of the biggest benefits of deferred compensation is it is, in fact, a tax-deferred program. So contributions are made on a pre-tax basis, which is a huge benefit. The assets only get taxed as they are taken out after an employee retires or severs service. And so there are currently 23 investment options in the plan. The majority of those are mutual fund investment options, and they range from very conservative to aggressive. There are equity funds, bond funds, domestic, international, large cap, small cap. There's a lot to choose from. And that is why we also offer a managed account service, and that's for a small additional fee. Participants can get either investment advice or they can actually have their assets managed professionally through that service, where their assets get diversified based on an asset allocation model. It gets rebalanced quarterly, pretty much anything that a professional investment manager would do. We also have a guaranteed investment account. It's called the Kern Stable Value Fund. That is essentially a guaranteed savings account that the interest is set on a quarterly basis, and that's what you get. There's no fluctuation there. And that is definitely an added benefit. We also have a direct brokerage portal, and that is for the more savvy investors. They can allocate up to 30% of their assets, and they can put that into essentially a TD Ameritrade account where they can invest in any stock or mutual fund that is traded on a publicly traded exchange. And then very importantly, and this is unique to Kern County's plan, is that a very generous 6% match is provided to eligible employees. These are employees that are on the Tier 2 retirement, so they have a lower retirement tier, but they also get a dollar-for-dollar match up to 6% of their contribution. And so that is a huge benefit. And we really try and target those people and engage those people to make sure that they are contributing and taking advantage of that match. And so the eligible employees there are basically general employees, meaning non-safety, hired after November 2007. Those are the folks that are eligible. So that is very important. Now I want to talk about some of the specific benefits that participants will get as a result of the transfer to Voya Financial. First and foremost is lower fees. Who doesn't like lower fees, right? We are able to lower the fees from 15 basis points down to 10 basis points. We went through a very rigorous request for proposal process, and Voya Financial really sharpened their pencil and provided a good proposal, and that's allowing us to reduce fees, so that's huge. The other thing that we're getting is a superior investment return on the new Kern Stable Value Fund that Voya will be managing. It is still a fixed income pool of AAA rated government securities, both agencies and treasuries, but the guaranteed investment rate that will be achieved there is going to be significantly higher. Currently, the investment return on Empower's Kern Stable Value Fund is 2.05%. Now that gets reset on a quarterly basis, but it's currently 2.05. When we switch over to Voya and the assets are transferred, while we don't know the exact initial rate, it's going to be between 3 and 3.5%. So it's a huge bump. And to put that in context, about $220 million are currently in the Kern Stable Value Fund. And so with an interest rate of, say, 3.05, which is the lower end of what we're going to get initially, that's 1% higher. That's $2.2 million of additional money that's going to go directly into the participants' accounts who are invested in the Kern Stable Value Fund. So that's hugely beneficial to participants. We also feel that Voya Financial's website platform is fantastic. It's really intuitive. It's easy to navigate. It's easy to change things. They also have a very far superior mobile application that is dynamic. You can make changes to your investments and things on the mobile app versus currently you can't do that. And so we're very excited about that. And I do have a representative from Voya Financial, Gavin Gruenberg, here. If I could just introduce him really quickly and have him say hi.
Thank you, Jordan. Chairman Scrivener, members of the board, I will be very brief. Jordan's provided a very nice summary of the enhancements for the plan, but I wanted to thank the county for the opportunity to work with its employees. I also want to commend Jordan and his staff on the request for proposal process, certainly very thorough, followed according to the terms. We deal with many of these processes, and this was run very, very well, and honored to have the opportunity to work with county employees. We do believe that we provide the right combination of the digital or online experience with face-to-face service, and we know that face-to-face service has been important to county employees for many, many years, so we intend to continue on that and enhance with the digital experience. So thank you again. We look forward to working with the county employees.
Thank you. Appreciate you being here, and welcome aboard.
Thank you, Gavin. Just a few more minutes, sorry. I also want to say that we're very lucky that our current local representative, who is located in our office upstairs in this building, we were able to transition her from Empower. She's been with us for a little over a year and a half now. She's already established a lot of relationships with employees, and she's made that connection. So we're very happy that we were able to transition her as well. She is, as of yesterday, a Voya employee, and that's Liliana Fahel right here. Say hi. So we're very happy to have her continue, because we feel during the transition that really helps in the process, that employees already are going to have a familiar face there. So now I briefly want to talk about some of the activities that are going to occur in the transition, again, starting next week and going up until September 20th when the actual transition occurs. So first, just a comment about the fund lineup. It is remaining largely the same. Obviously, we're having a change to the Kern Stable Value Fund, but that is a huge positive change. There is one international equity fund, Oakmark Fund, that is not on Voya's platform, so we're going to have to move that to a different international equity fund that is also a very high-performing fund. So that'll be mapped directly over there. And then we are also removing one fund, which is the Secured Foundation Annuity Fund. That fund was frankly very underutilized anyway. Only a handful of people elected to go into that fund. And so that fund is also not available on the Voya Financial platform, but it was very underutilized, so we made the decision to just get rid of that fund. The funds will be mapped over to the Kern Stable Value Fund. So yesterday, a countywide email went out. I don't know if you guys saw that, highlighting 6 informational sessions that we will be giving next week. And we really encourage county employees and employees of Hospital Authority and the other employers to come, ask questions, understand what it is. I would like to, just for the record, read when those are. So next Wednesday, August 23rd at 9 a.m. and 12 p.m. Next Thursday, August 24th at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. And next Friday, August 25th at 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. All of those meetings will be held here in the Board of Supervisors chambers, and we certainly encourage everyone impacted to come and ask questions. The countywide email that went out included an attachment that had a lot of transition information in it. That transitional brochure is also being mailed to the home address of every single participant, so had to make sure that everybody's going to get the necessary information. The actual transition is going to begin September 8th, and that's when there's the sort of quiet period begins for 12 days between September 8th and September 20th. And the biggest impact is that during that time, participants will not have access to their money, and that's important to know. That's a little inconvenient, but it's necessary to have that for the transition. During that time, the money will still be invested. Participants will be able to look at their balance. They just won't be able to access the money until September 20th, and then they can go on the new website, Voya's new website, access their funds, and everything should be normal then. We do have a new website. Everyone is used to Kern457.com. We have to change that. The new one is going to be KernCounty457.com. So one of those small changes, but that obviously is important for folks to know. And so that website should be up and running and available within the next day or two. It's not going to have participant level detail on it yet, because that won't happen until the funds are transferred over, but it will have information about the plan and Voya and the transfer. And so again, we encourage employees and participants to come and ask questions and understand. And if employees are not already signed up, they're welcome to come, and we'll sign them up during those transition sessions as well. And that concludes my presentation. I'm certainly happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Any questions from members of the board? Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kaufman, nice to see you today. Thank you for your coming forward and telling us about this. Is our deferred comp plan an ERISA 338 plan?
No, as a government plan, it is not subject to ERISA. However, we follow pretty much all of the ERISA regulations, but again, as a government plan, we're not legally required to.
There is a growing trend across the country for participants in plans, as has happened in many other industries and many other sectors of our economy, for participants to be caught up in class action suits against employers for whatever issues there are that, we didn't get an adequate rate of return or whatever else. Right. what precautions are we taking to make sure we're adequately covered and we've mitigated that risk? And what role does this group play in helping us manage that and mitigate that risk?
Right. So, excellent question. As a fiduciary, obviously, of the plan assets, and Voya is a sort of a co-fiduciary, one of the requirements is to provide the investment options so that participants have choices. That's one of the main issues. When you've seen some of those class action suits, it's about being forced into certain things. In our plan, the employee has the complete discretion to invest in whatever options are on the fund lineup. It's all some of those class action suits are also presumably about mismanagement of those funds. We hold these funds in a separate trust that is for the sole benefit of the employees and cannot be used for any other purpose whatsoever. One of the reasons why there were 9 agreements last week, 9 separate ones, a couple of those were to establish the new trust accounts that are, again, separate and distinct from any other accounts either held by the county or held by Voya, to make sure that those funds are kept solely for the benefit of the participants. So those are some of the mitigation activities.
I appreciate you explaining that to us. My understanding is one of the fundamental issues is not necessarily were they offered appropriate alternatives into which to invest their money, but the list of those alternatives, to the extent it was controlled by us or by Voya, is one of the fundamental issues of these class action lawsuits. And there's this, some people call it open architecture, where you can invest in anything, anywhere. It eliminates us from being kind of the gatekeeper on, you can only invest it within this universe, or you can open it up. Are we dealing with that in a way, are these guys open architecture? Are we dealing in a way that we are not incurring liability that we don't otherwise need to?
Yeah, Supervisor Maggard, through the chair. Yes, this is absolutely an open architecture fund structure. The Deferred Comp Advisory Committee goes through a process every year to look at the fund lineup and has a very specific process to change underperforming funds. And we can select funds from the entire universe. In fact, there are no Voya-specific funds in this, in the fund lineup at all. And it is completely open architecture. The Deferred Compensation Advisory Committee that meets on a monthly basis, I mean, the public is welcome to attend and give their input on different funds, and periodically we have had that, and we take that into consideration when we are looking at our fund lineup. We don't always change funds, because if all the funds are performing adequately pursuant to our investment policy statement that is approved by the board along with the plan document, then we don't make any changes if all the funds are performing well. But is absolutely an open architecture structure.
Thank you. One last question. You talked about the rate of return on, I don't know if it was cash or what it was, but the element there that you said it went from 1.75 to 3.25 or whatever that number was. Mm-hmm. Walk us through that one more time, please.
So the current stable value fund earns 2.05%.
2.05.
2.05. Our initial crediting rate when the funds are transferred, so beginning September 20th, will be somewhere between 3 and 3.5. We don't know the exact amount because the way it's being transferred, some of the fixed income securities that are held in that fund are going to be able to be transferred in kind. Some of them are going to have to be liquidated and the cash transferred. And so there's sort of a fair market value calculation that has to go through there. And then once it's all transitioned, we're going to know what the crediting rate is. But we do know, and Voya has guaranteed it will be between 3 and 3.5%. And again, that is the initial crediting rate, and that gets reset quarterly, same as it has been under Empower.
It's a great way to start, though.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is.
Okay, thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Supervisor Gleason.
Thanks, Chairman. My question was just right along that Kern Stable Fund. My understanding of what you're saying is that because the transition is occurring, the increase in the rate of return from 2.05 to 3.05 to 3.5 is caused by the liquidation of some resources and the transference of cash and a different climate, environmental climate that's occurring in, is going to allow this increase in rate of return initially to 3.05 to 3.5. But are you also saying that because of that increase in rate of return, the risk allocation in the current stable fund is going to remain stable? I mean, it's not going to change?
Correct.
Okay.
It is managed slightly differently, but it is still 100% AAA rated government securities.
Thank you.
It's managed slightly differently under VOIA, but it is still the same highly rated pool of securities.
Okay, thank you, Supervisor Gleason. Any other comments from the board? No? How about the public? Any comments? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Mr. Kaufman. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much for your time.
That brings us to the conclusion of our agenda this morning. We do have several items to consider in closed session today. First, under the County Administrative Office, we have items 41 and 42, and under County Council, items 43 through 45. And so at this time, I will entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session.
So moved.
We are adjourned.